Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the HazMat podcast, episode number 19. Now, today is a special episode, Jacques. Do you know why?
B-class?
This is for B-class removal contractors or workers. So, by removalist, for removalist. Today, we're going to be talking about how to make your B-class job run better.
Oh,
This will be great for everybody. I'm sure there'll be something in there that will help you in the future. So for all of our brothers and sisters in asbestos removal, this one is definitely worth a watch. So first thing with a B-class removal, and this translates to a lot of jobs, any jobs really, to be honest, but the first thing you want to do to make your job run really, really well is when you wake up in the morning is to get your mindset right. That sounds a bit corny, but if you come to work in a bad mood or thinking about what time you can knock off or thinking about problems at home, you're not going to be as effective on the job site as if you're in a good mood. So as you know, we talk about this at HazMat a lot, but certainly you're going to be a lot more productive if you're thinking the right thoughts. So a couple of things that I like to talk about is being grateful for having a job, thinking about providing for your family and being able to pay your bills, thinking about the fact that you have the privilege to do something useful. Removing asbestos is not a trivial...
worthwhile, yeah.
Definitely, it's a worthwhile thing. So please don't ever see yourself as, I'm just an asbestos removalist, that's all I do, I remove ASI. There's a lot more to it. You actually perform a very valuable service to the community, to your clients, and also to everybody that is affected by asbestos. So, obviously, start the day in a positive mindset, and as I mentioned before, that translates to a lot of things. Do you agree that would make that makes a day run better when you're...
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're constantly caught up in negativity, then that kind of just snowballs.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you're just left there standing, staring.
Definitely. And I really believe one thing we can control is what we think about. So...
Yeah, because your thoughts become your actions, and that becomes your life.
Exactly, yeah. So, okay, even if you're having a bad day, which we all do from time to time, or things aren't great at home, we can choose how we're going to frame it, what we're going to think about. So we try and leave that stuff behind. You'll have a much better day and a better job. Okay, number 2 for me is getting your personal gear right. So we've talked about getting your mindset right. Now we're talking about actually getting your own gear for yourself right. I'm not really talking so much about having your mask or your suit. Those are important, and we'll talk about those shortly, but more things that are going to keep you comfortable throughout the day. This again translates to anybody that comes to work or works in a job where you're in different locations depending on how things are going.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about if it's a bit cold, make sure you've got a jersey with you. As a removalist, when we do an asbestos job, you end up drenched in sweat. Or at least I do. I'm sure you do too.
Sometimes, yeah.
So maybe bring some dry clothes. So at lunchtime you can actually change into a dry set of clothes and not be walking around in wet clothes all day.
Yeah, especially in winter, because that's how you get sick.
Definitely, yeah. Yep, definitely. I'm a big supporter of bringing a nice big bottle of water to work, having water with you.
And food for that matter, because, if the boys shoot up to Waikanae or something, you never know how rural the job site's going to be.
Exactly, yeah. No, that was going to be my next point, and that's exactly right. Water and have your lunch, and you can't always rely that you're going to go to the closest bakery or the shop that you need to go to, depending on how the team's going. You might end up being hungry all day. So have some food with you. The other thing is, what have we got here? A rain jacket or an extra pair of socks or whatever you might need. But think about, you're away from home for the day. What's a couple of things you can bring with you that you need that you may need at least. So get your personal gear right before you even come to work. Then we get into the actual getting ready to go out to the job. So let's say we're at the yard and we know we've got a Class B job to do. So we know automatically, by experience mainly, but all the gear that we're going to need, polythene, plastic, we're going to need vacuum, we're going to need extension cords and RCDs, we're going to need, a water sprayer, suits and gloves. We know by experience we need all this stuff. So what the main thing for me is double checking before you leave the gate that you've got everything you need. That's going to automatically make your job a lot smoother when you don't get halfway through the day and end up, I've run out of tape. Or, geez, we're going to do a removal today. Woe is me, I forgot my bar. You're not going to be able to remove a lot of cladding without one of these, right? So take that extra time to make sure you've got the right equipment that you're going to need for the job. And on top of that, certainly there's no point bringing a vacuum cleaner out to the job if it's faulty. There's no point taking a water sprayer that is clogged up or won't spray water.
Yeah.
So would you agree it's worth checking these things before you go?
Yeah. Make sure that the gear you've got works.
Yeah.
And that goes with your PPE and your masks and stuff as well. It doesn't really help you get to site and realise, my mask has a tear in it or something.
I mean, I agree though. We've learned this by experience, and this is why we can give this kind of advice now to our removal community. It pays to take that extra time to double check, do we have everything we need for the job? There's nothing more frustrating for the removal staff or for the employer or even for the client if there's a significant delay because we have to stop the job and run off and get a vacuum that works or an extra roll of polythene because we ran out. So double check. You'll be able to go home earlier. You'll finish a job earlier if you're not waiting around to get the equipment that you need that was forgotten about.
Yeah.
Then I want to move on to getting actually onto site and doing a good site setup. That makes, if you set up your removal area correctly, it's going to make the job go a lot quicker. So doing for example, drop sheets, using drop sheets is wonderful. We should be using them anyway, but it catches debris. I've always found if I think I'm going to need a metre worth out from a building, I might go double that because the last thing you want to do is be vacuuming grass or extra areas where you've dropped debris where it's sprayed off from your drop sheet.
Especially beddings and stuff because soil, that just clogs up your vacuum within seconds.
Exactly. It's not ideal to vacuum up soil, is it? And so a good setup with secure drop sheets. There's no point putting a drop sheet down that's going to blow off in the first breeze. So if you can secure it with tape or garden pegs or some bricks or whatever you can find. But this all comes back to, and we'll round off the end of the podcast with it, but doing it once and doing it right is a lot quicker than having to do it over again. So same thing with your site setup. If you just put one staple through a sign up onto a fence to show that it's an asbestos job and it blows down, well then you've got to go and put it back up again.
Yeah.
Why don't you put 2 staples in or 4 and make sure it stays there secure? Same thing with tying up your danger tape. Same thing with your drop sheets. Make sure when you're setting up your site, put out everything you're going to need for that portion of work. Have it out and ready to go.
Yeah. Because once you set it up, you can't really start digging through your ute or the trailer or anything.
Exactly.
Contaminated.
Exactly. You're going to have to then, if you are up to vacuuming and you've left the vacuum in the ute, you're now going to have to stop what you're doing, decontaminate, go get the vacuum, come back, set it up, resuit, and then commence vacuuming. Whereas if it's loaded, ready, it's been checked, the bag is empty and ready, it's not blocked, it's plugged in, it works, That's a lot quicker to just have it there ready to go. And that's the same with anything. Water sprayers, there's no point having a water sprayer in the back of the ute when you need it halfway through your job or at the beginning of your job. So again, yes, your site setup is very important. Of course, then we move on to doing the job itself, and it is really the same piece of advice we've just been giving out on all these other things. I harp on about this a lot to our removalists, and I'm a big proponent of do the job correctly and methodically the first time. Do it one time. So we talk about B class, whether it's a roof or cladding or something like that. Take your time to remove the panels, the fixings, the debris behind the panels or on the building paper.
Yeah.
Get it clean and finished, and that bit is done. It is very difficult it's not difficult, it's tempting to race through a job and pull off, a whole bunch of cladding and make a big old mess, and then have to go back over it 2 or 3 times to get it clean. I really think slow down, clean as you go, and move along at a nice slow pace, and you'll actually finish quicker, in my view.
And you don't miss as much stuff. Because if you keep saying, I'll come back to that, and you forget, I have to go back to that.
Yeah.
Because by the time you finish the wall, you have 10 other things that you said, I'll get back to that.
That's right. The other piece of advice to make your B-class game better with doing the job right is plan out with your team, or if it's by yourself, make a plan of certain key points you want to get to throughout the day. Plan it out from the beginning so you know what you're aiming for. Okay, by our morning break, we should have the cladding on this side off. By lunch break, we should have that side detail cleaned. By afternoon break, we should have the other side off. I believe that's as far as we're going to get today, so let's aim for that. And if everyone's in agreement, then you know whether you're falling behind or not.
Yeah.
And it's certainly better to take a break at a milestone than just take a break halfway through. So if you're removing heavy cladding, get it all down before you take your break. So pick where you take your breaks and make your job run with milestones, whether it's your supervisor comes up with it, input into the plan if you don't agree with what they say, but come up with some sort of agreement about what's reasonable. We're doing a roof today, let's get half off by morning smoko, the other half off by lunch, detail clean by mid-afternoon, ready for clearance, something like that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, I suppose, so we talked about yourself getting your mind right, getting your personal equipment right, and then getting the equipment for the job right. Then we talked about setting up the site right. Then we've talked about doing the job right. The last thing would be, in my mind, is packing up, not so much with the view of just getting home. Yes, you need to get home and have family time and have your R&R time, and this is something we'll talk about shortly, which I talk about energy conservation. But try and prepare or pack up in a way that things are easier for you the next morning.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you're on your way home and it's 4:30 and you're tired and your fuel gauge is nearly empty, you will thank yourself in the morning if the last night you actually filled up before you put the ute away.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than starting a day by having to unpack the equipment from the day before.
Or having to clean it.
Or clean.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Pack everything away nicely at the end of the job. Clean the equipment that should be cleaned. Fuel up the ute so it's good to go tomorrow. Make sure the vacuum bags have been emptied out. Everything like that. So, yeah, I would certainly look at finishing off one day with a view of the next morning. Do yourself some favours. Get ready. Start getting ready for the next day the night before. And then we repeat the process. So I really believe over 6.5 years of doing this, these are key fundamentals that will make jobs run a lot smoother. Some of the issues with forgetting equipment, or walking around in wet clothes, or coming to work in a bad mindset, just waiting to go home, not unpacking not unpacking from the job correctly, so you're starting in a shambles the next morning. These are all things we've learned from experience, haven't we? And it makes our jobs go a lot better now. So I hope that will give our brothers and sisters in removal something to think about. I'm sure a lot of you guys are doing these things anyway, but we're always happy to try and contribute some information to make your job run better. Remember, the smoother a job runs, the less exhausted you are, the less depressed or negative you are about work.
But even just from a business point of view, like the faster the job goes, the more money you make on it. So
exactly,
the longer it takes, the more it costs you.
Everybody wins. When you slow down, you actually get a lot more done. Jacques, do you know who Abraham Lincoln is?
Oh, yeah.
Abraham Lincoln. He had a famous quote. So he is a former American president in the 1860s. He got assassinated, which is quite pertinent at the moment since the Trump incident. But in any case, he is famous for a lot of his philosophy. And one thing he mentioned, one of his famous quotes is, "If I was given 4 hours to cut down a tree, I would spend the first 3 sharpening my axe."
That's a good one.
And that sort of applies to what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, get everything ready, get things clean, make sure your tools are sharp and in good repair, because the rest of it is a waste of time and extra energy that it takes. So if you do that, you'll have a better job, you'll feel better. Just on the energy conservation thing we were talking about, if you're going home from a removal job completely wiped out and exhausted and broken off, is that going to do you much good for the next day?
Probably not.
No.
And because you'll just wake up tired and exhausted. But that comes back to the planning, because if you do your planning correctly and like maintain all your stuff, then I don't know, it's exhausting if every single thing you do, there's something that falls up, like, oh, I can't pick up this tool and use it, I have to clean it first before I jump into the work. But if it's already clean, then you just pick it up and go. And that makes your day seem fast and less of a hassle. Exactly.
So I couldn't say it better, but we are all professionals. As I mentioned earlier, we have an important job that we do. We're professional people, and that means we need to be consistent at work. And there's no point going hell for leather for 2 days of the week and then spend the next 3 limping, or you can't pick anything up, or you call in sick. You also have an obligation to have a life and have a family and have hobbies. So I really believe in conserving your energy, that one job you got to go and do, you should do it at a pace that is going to be suitable for you to go home still and spend time with your significant other, or take your dog for a walk, or go to karate practice, or play an instrument, or cook dinner, whatever it might be. But you're not going to enjoy this career if you burn out too quickly.
Yeah, no, you have to keep yourself sustainable.
Exactly. So a lot of this advice is to try and get you to conserve your energy. We do a physical job. It's not always a glamorous job, obviously, but it's an important job, and some days are physically very, very tough. But you should still have the energy left over at the end of the day to go to the gym or to engage in your family time or hobbies or personal time and feel good about what you've done. So if you're getting completely exhausted at a job, have a look at some of this advice, see if any of that would help, and keep an eye on taking care of yourself. So if you don't take care of yourself, it's very hard to take care of other people or to do a good job. Well, there you go, Jacques. I hope that's going to be helpful for people. Let everyone know what they can do to support our channel.
Like, follow, and subscribe.
Like, follow,
and share the video too.
Can you believe episode 20 is just around the corner?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I don't know exactly what we're going to do yet, but I'm going to make it a special one, I think, because it's worth celebrating.
Yeah, 20 episodes.
Thank you for joining us for the previous 19. Have a lovely morning, and we will see you next week with another episode.